Hello everyone, I'm Lalit Singh. So now we have looked at how exactly we can create our very basic app, how exactly we can include views, how exactly we can handle our views. So next we're going to take a look at activities and intents. We have already been through what exactly activity is. The whole screen which we see on your Android device is known as activity. So now we are going to go even deeper to understand what exactly or how exactly the mechanism of activity works inside the Android. So in this session, we're going to cover about activity, how we define the activities, how intent are helpful in invoking the activities, how exactly we can transfer data between two activities. So all this is going to cover in this session. So first of all, what exactly is an activity? Activity is an application component, which we discussed. It's one of the application component. Last we discussed there were four: activity, service, broadcast receiver, and content provider. So activity is an application component, and whatever you see on your screen, all the UI which we saw in our last applications, they all were presented by the mechanism, or they all were presented by a class activity. So an activity comprises of two things: a Java class and a UI, or that is a layout, right? So activity can be shown as a part of application screen itself, or it can be a floating activity, that is, it is in the background. If I have to give you an example, whenever you drag your notification bar, you see your activity is still in the background. So that notification bar is now what? It's floating over your another activity. So activity is what? Activity is whatever you see on your screen. It can be a complete window, it can be a floating window, and basically under the hood, it's a class with a UI. So what exactly activity can do? Well, if you are designing an application for e-commerce, then you can design an activity to place the orders. If you are designing an application of social app, chatting app, then you can design an activity to create a chat room, right? So all the other UI components which we just saw in our previous session, buttons, text views, scroll views, so they all are being also presented to the screen with the help of activity only. Until unless there is no activity, you can't even see all those UI components. So activity is the activity under the hood is responsible for displaying your whole UI. So activity has a life cycle. It starts with onCreate. It goes to start application, and it runs, and it can be paused, it can be stopped also, and it can be destroyed also, or it can be restarted. So we're going to go through the life cycle in our next session. But for this session, let's just talk about more in activities. So if I have to show you examples of activities, I think you already know. Well, anything you see on your screen, you have already tried examples of that. All the application you have created up until now, you were able to see where exactly they were shown. They were in activities. And you can see some inbuilt examples also, like you open up a Kelsey, and the Kelsey is opening up. What exactly is that? Those buttons and those edit text, they are shown inside the activity. You open up a map application, that's also an activity. An application can contain one or more than one activities. Generally, when you create an application, it will be tons of activities. It will be combination of all the activities together, and then you are navigating through one activity to another activity. But there will always be one main activity. What is that main activity? We call it launcher activity also. You take any application out there, whether it's a social app, whether it is an e-commerce app, whether it is a company app. Whenever you open up that app, you always see a particular screen at the very starting. From that particular screen, from that main screen, you can navigate to other screens. But that particular screen will always come whenever you open that app. So that screen is known as main activity. You can organize your activities in the form of parent and child also. Like from your main activity, you get transferred to some other screen. And from there, if you want to go back, you can always go back to your parent activities also. So we'll see how exactly we organize our parent and child relationship also. Of course, it has to be done in Android manifest file. Like we discussed in our previous session that Android manifest file is a file which will give you the information about the application itself. So if you are creating more than one screen in your application, your your application should know about it. So that's where you need to put all the activities. You need to register all the activities. Activity is not just a Java file. It also needs a UI file. If you want to show any UI over the screen, you need to create that UI first in your XML file and then connect that XML file to your Java file. That's when the activity becomes whole. Your Java file plus your XML file makes your activity complete. Whatever you have designed in that XML file as UI, it appears on the screen. So let's just discuss about how we implement activities now. Well, we definitely need a UI first. So we will go and create a UI in our layout folder, which is inside our REST folder. Of course, we need a Java file, which we have to extend with the class activity or AppCompact activity. Now, AppCompact activity is also extending from your activity class only. So we can always use AppCompact activity also. Then you need a way to connect your XML file with your Java file, and that's when onCreate comes in. This is one of the lifecycle method of your activity, and you want to connect your UI part to your Java file at the very starting of your activity itself, because onCreate is the lifecycle method which runs at the very beginning of the activity. So at the starting only, you want to give the UI part to your activity, and after that, even if you do all these things, but you forget to declare that in your Android manifest file, it's no good. You have to put that in your Android manifest file also. So you have to declare it in your manifest file. If you follow all these steps, then only your activity is perfectly registered, and you will be able to see your activity on your screen. So let's just talk about XML file. How we define your activity in XML file? Well, XML file is nothing but a layout file. So it will have a root layout, a view group, which we have been discussing up until now. So relative layout or linear layout, it can be any layout, and inside that, as many as we want. As of right now, we are putting just a text view, and that text says, "Let's shop for food." And this layout I want to connect to my Java file. So for that, I need to create a Java file for the activity also. So that's what my Java file looks like of the activity. It can be any name, public class, main activity, or it can be public class ABC activity, extends AppCompact activity. Now, AppCompact activity is a class which is again extending from the activity only. So you could have given extends activity also. So why exactly I'm giving AppCompact activity? Why not activity? The thing is, if you are designing an application which will work only for the latest version, you do not bother about your previous version of Android to run your application. At that point of time, you can perfectly extend it from your you are allowed to extend it from your activity, because you are not bothered about your previous version. Because in your latest version of Android, there will be features which will be supported, like material design, or like new security runtime permission, right? But those features were not introduced in your previous versions, like 4.0, 4.4. So if you want those features also to be supported in your previous versions, that's when you use AppCompact activity. Because we are not only targeting the latest versions of Android, because if we go about doing that, we won't be able to connect to the majority of people, and we want our application to be used by majority of people. So that's the reason we are using AppCompact activity, and this class has been inherited, or this class we are using from a support library, AppCompact, which we discussed on our very first slide. Next, onCreate. onCreate, like I told you, is one of the lifecycle method. This is the very first lifecycle method in your activity, which is being called whenever your activity is shown to the user. So that's where you want to initialize everything for your activity, right? So before actually doing your own customized initialization, you do want to initialize whatever your parent onCreate was doing, because this is the concept of inheritance. I'm overriding it. So that's why you want to call super.onCreate, so that you can get all the features from your parent class, of course. Plus, now you can go ahead and customize it by attaching it with your own UI also. How do you do that? Well, that's how you do it. Set content view. Set content view is the method which will help you attach your XML layout which you have already created. So for that, we already know that there is a r.java file which takes care for all the resources which you put in your REST folder. So how do you access it? r.layout.activity_main, and that's the name of your XML file. And now they both have been attached. Now, am I good to view this activity now? Have I completed all the steps? No, we are still remain with one step, that is registering it with my Android manifest file. That's how you register any activity in your Android manifest file, with a tag activity and the attribute Android name, and give the name of the activity. Now, if you want to provide a behavior to a particular activity, let's say there might be a 10 activity inside your application. Now, which activity you want to make launcher activity, right? Which activity you want your user to see every time he opens up your application? Well, that's when your intent filter comes. Your intent filter provides a specific behavior to a particular activity. Now you will see that intent filter not just provide the behavior to activity only, but it can provide the behaviors to other Android components also, like services and broadcast. That we will see in our further slides, that we will see in our further sessions. For now, what exactly this intent filter is doing here? It is telling that this activity will be a main activity, that is by providing an action as main, and also telling the Android system that this will be a launcher activity for this particular application. So there can be only one launcher activity in an application. So every time I open up my application, this will be the activity which will be shown to the user. If you have a Java file for this, and if you have a correct XML file attached for this, every time you open up, this will be the activity which will be shown to the user. So that was all about activities. Now, let's just go even more deeper and understand about the concept of intents, because under the hood, all the activities you see, all the screens you see appearing up on your Android device, they all are being launched by your intents only. So let's just talk about intent first. Intent is a class which is used to invoke all the Android fundamental components except content provider. So you will invoke activities with intent. You are allowed to invoke services with intent. You are allowed to invoke your broadcast receiver also with intent. But you don't want to invoke your content provider with intent, because content provider specifically deals with data, and you don't want anybody to hack or tamper with your intent and lose your data. If I have to tell you about how exactly your any application launches, how you see, you click on your home button, and there are so many applications. You click any one of those applications, and one of your screen opens up. But what exactly is happening there? Whenever you click on any app, there is an intent which is being fired, and the Android system knows that now I have to open an intent who is a main and a launcher, because for that application, we must have already defined a main activity, which is a launcher, right? So every time you open up an application, there is an intent fired, and Android system sees that, okay, this is the particular intent I need to open up, and it shows that particular activity. To make things more clear, let's just talk about intent more, that what we can do with intents. Well, we can start activities with intent. Well, how exactly you can start? Well, you can create a button and then click on a button and start a new activity with that, right? You can start, you can create bunch of buttons, and you can go to different activities. You can navigate to different screens from that. You can use it for that purpose. Or you want to share a particular or if you want to share particular data, at that point of time also you can use intents. Let's say you want to share your photograph with another application. That's when also you can use intents in your activities. Well, you can start your services also with intent. Let's say you want to download, initiate a download, or you want to open up a music. So how would you, we all know that we open the music and the downloading part goes into the services. But how exactly services gets invoked? That's when your intent comes in. Your intent has an important role to play to start your service or to start your activities, and the broadcast receiver also. Well, when we talk about intents, there are specifically two types of intents. Well, what are those? First is explicit intent. Another one is implicit intent. When we talk about explicit intent, in explicit intent, we know the source and destination. What do we mean by that? We exactly know from where exactly we are transferring and where to transfer. And generally, you will be using this kind of intent inside your application itself. Let's say you have 10 activities. Now, you are at a particular activity at that point of time, and you click a button, and you want to open up 7th activity. So, you do what? From that particular activity, you want to transfer to 7th activity. So, you know the source, you know the destination, right? So, you specifically know what you want to do here. So, when we talk about implicit intent are used to invoke the activities from different applications. For example, let's say you make a call and you have a dual SIM phone. Now, at that point of time, let's say you have 2 SIMs installed in your device. Now, you must have seen it asks you 2 options, which SIM you want to call. So, what exactly happened here? You just provided action. You want to make a call. So, your Android system started searching out for all the applications who can handle call. And it found out that there are actually 2 applications which can do that because there are 2 SIMs installed. Now, let's say there is only 1 SIM inside your phone. At that point of time, it won't even ask you that from which SIM you want to make a call. So, this process of searching out within the whole Android system is also known as intent resolution. So, how exactly activities start then? Well, whenever you are using explicit intent. Well, first of all, to start a different activity using an explicit intent, you have to create an object of intent. That we can do by calling the intent class, a variable of that, and inside that, this is what we call source and destination. Source is this. This means current class or current class object. Second one is known as the name of the activity. We will know the name of the activity inside our own application itself. Yeah. If we are creating an application, we will know we will know all the name of the activities which we are dealing with. So we can always use explicit intent to transfer between activities within our own application. But this will only initialize the intent. To trigger the intent, you need to always use start activity. Until unless you do not trigger your intent, you will not get transferred to your second activity. So, start activity and provide the object of intent inside that, and you will get transferred to the next screen. How do you use implicit intent then? Well, in case of implicit intent, you do not know the source and destination, but what you do know, what action you want to perform, and what is the URI or the data which you want to pass when that particular action is performed. For example, if you want to open up a web page, you would like to transfer a link, that is http www.google.com. But if you want to make a call, that is a call action, you would like to transfer a phone number. If you like to open up a map, you would like to transfer longitude and latitude. So that's how you can open different applications and different activities of different applications. And again, to trigger that, you have to use start activity. So let's just take a look at the examples of implicit intent now. Okay, so now let's say you want to open up google.com. So first of all, you will provide a URI and change it to your URI data type, and then you will initialize your intent. While you are initializing your intent, you need an action and the data. Data you already know URI. Action, you are putting action view. And action view is a generalized action. If you there are so many actions. If you want to make a call, there will be a action call also. If you want to make a dial action, there will be action dial also. If you want to send a SMS, there will be action send also. and all these actions are very hard to remember. Now, if you want to make a generalized action so that you don't have to remember each and every action, you can always use action view, and it will depend upon the type of data you are passing now, and it will perform according to data what you are passing. Let's say if you are passing a HTTP request, then it will always open up your browser. Now, let's say if you are passing a call or if you are passing a number, at that point of time, the URI will change from HTTP to TEL. Now, this particular thing which you see here, that is HTTP or TEL, this is known as data scheme. Now, according to this data scheme only, your action view will start performing. If it sees that the data scheme is TEL, it will start looking for all the call applications. If it sees that your data scheme is HTTP, it will look for browser. If it sees that your data scheme is geo, it will start looking for all the map applications. And at the end, you have to trigger your intent by using start activity, and it will open up the browser. If there are more than one browser, it will ask the options from you in which browser you want to open it up. That's called intent resolution. That's the process is called intent resolution because it's searched out in the whole Android. But if there is only one browser, it will never ask you. It will open up straight away in that browser. Now, let's just take one more example where you do know the specific action type. Well, again, you will provide the URI. Here, the data scheme you can see has been changed. It's TEL, and you provide the number. And then again, you initialize the intent, and this time you know that what exactly the specific action is. So, action dial and provide the data. And again, you will put start activity, and it will trigger the intent, and you will be able to open up a dial application. So, you see there are it's totally depend upon you that how exactly you want to handle your implicit intent. If you know a particular action, go for that particular action. If you don't know, then use the generalized action. So, now we know how exactly intent works. We know what exactly activities are. So, let's just see how exactly the whole application which we see, which we navigate, we click on a button and application opens up, how exactly that thing happens up. Whenever you open up any application, it may contain 10 activities inside it. Now, out of those 10 activities, there will always be one launcher activity. Now, whenever you open up application, that launcher activity do have the behavior defined in your intent filter. So that intent gets fired, and Android system sees, okay, this is my launcher activity, and it opens up your main activity at the very beginning. Now, from there, let's say you have a button to transfer you to a shop activity or a different activity. You click on that button, you will again use which intent, which type of intent this time. Inside this, you will use explicit intent because you know that that activity actually resides inside my application only. So again, Android system will fire that intent and open up that second activity. From there, you can navigate to third, from fourth. So in this way, intent always you can always use intent to navigate between different screens. So now you have seen how exactly you can transfer between screens, and you can now you are no longer just working with a single screen, which up until now we have been working with. Now it's more fun to work with your applications, right? Now it's good. You can transfer with between these screens, but what happens when you want to transfer the data also? So that's what we are going to see, that how exactly we can use our intent itself to transfer the data between applications. So when it comes to transferring the data between activities, intents can be used in two ways. First, using the data. Second, using the extras. Data part we have already seen when we did the implicit intent. We provide a particular URI, and accordingly, with the help of intent resolution, it provides the same data to the next application. It can be any location, it can be any phone number, it can be any link also. What about extra? Well, extra transfer the data in the form of key and value pairs, and that data is being saved in a class known as bundle. Let me go through with that bundle again. Bundle is a class which is used in the Android to transfer the data or to save the data dynamically. What do I mean by dynamically? As soon as you close your application, as soon as your application is out of the memory, your data also goes away. So you can transfer the data while your application is still on. And that's all I want. I want to transfer the data between two applications. I want to transfer the data between two activities. So, for example, if I have to take an example, let's say I have first screen, and in that screen I put a name. Let's say Lalit Singh. And when I click on that button, there is a button which transfers you to the next activity. It takes you to the next activity, and whatever I put in that previous activity, that name should be transferred to my second activity. So that's when you will be using extras with the help of intents. So how do we use that? Well, you create an intent object first of all, like we have been doing up until now. An explicit intent object. You know the source and you know where to transfer. Second, this time, instead of directly calling start activity, before that you will put the data inside the intent with the help of extras. So that's one way to transfer the data between activities. This is the way when you want to transfer data from the first activity to the second activity. Now, what if your first activity is expecting the data from your second activity? For example, let's say you are making a payment in eBay. At that point of time, you will provide your card details on your first activity and you will click pay button, and it will go to the second activity, and now you are expecting from second activity to give you the result back whether the transaction has been complete or failed. So that's when you can also transfer the data from second activity to the first activity. So we will see that. So we will see the example of that also, how exactly we implement that. Let's just learn how exactly we can transfer the data from data first, the first part, which we have already seen. Like if I want to transfer to a particular link, Google page, or if I want to transfer a telephone number, that's how you do it. Intent.set data, and inside that you can put whatever the data you want. Like here, I want to put a link. Or if you want to transfer to a particular file inside your SD card, so that's when you will put again intent.set data, but this time the URI will change. Instead of just passing directly a link, it will become a file because you want to transfer to a file. What if you want to transfer the data using extras? Well, how do you use the extras? There is a method named putExtras, and inside that method you have two arguments. First argument is the name of the key. Second argument, the value you want to transfer. If it is an integer value, you will use the second argument as an int. If it is a string value you are transferring, you will use second argument as string. If it is an array you want to transfer, then you will use the second argument as array. But the first argument will remain string only because as it is the name of your key. So you can see that an example that let's say I want to transfer an array. Then I created a food list, and inside that food list we have rice, beans and fruits. Now I want to transfer this whole array to my next activity. So that's when I will put this inside my intent only. I will use the intent object dot put extra and use a key. It can be any key. It can be key 1, key 2, and then transfer that array here. So and then you trigger it. This time you can see the key can be anything. You can do hard-coded also, or you can declare as a constant at the top also. So whenever you are accessing your data in my second activity, you will always need a object of intent first. So if you have the object of intent and you are accessing a specific data type, then you will use the object of intent dot get the type of data and extras. Like if you are using intent, it will be get intent extras and the key value which you saved there or which you pass at that point of time. If you have given key 1 there, it will be key 1. If you remember in our previous slide, we passed put extra, there was a key and then the message, right? So this key is the one you will be using to access the data in my second application. So here, if you see that the first argument of get extra is always the key. If it is level, so that means there I must have transferred, there I must have defined level. But if you want to get all the data together, at that point of time, you need to do intent.getExtras, and it will give you the object of a class bundle. And from there, you can access each object independently. So what happens when your second activity is giving result back to your first activity? So at that point of time, you will be always triggering your activities by calling start activity for result. And in that case, when it reaches to the second activity, in that second activity, you have to provide whether the result was okay or result cancelled. Based on that, whether the result was okay or cancelled, you will perform operations again back to your first activity. So this is how you declare, this is how you transfer to your second activity whenever you are expecting result back from your second activity. You don't use start activity, you will use start activity for result. You will pass that intent object where you have specified in which activity you want to transfer, plus there will be a request code also. Why request code? Because there might be a chance that you are getting result back from different activities. So how would you distinguish if you are getting result back from a different activity? So that's when your request code comes in. Request code is nothing but an integer value. So we can give any integer values here. So when your second activity is done, so how do we get the result back in my first activity? So that's when a callback method is called on activity result. And this is where we will handle it. So this is how we trigger our first activity. I will tell where in which activity I want to transfer. That is an explicit intent. And this time, not start activity, but start activity for result. And pass that intent object and a request code. It can be any integer number. So now in your second activity, when you want to transfer the data back to your first activity, here, this is where you will put a normal intent object. And in that intent object, you will put your extras. You will transfer your data in the form of key and value pair. And then you will set the result OK and transfer back your intent to your first activity. While you are doing that, you have to finish your second activity also so that you can get back to your first activity. And in your first activity now, automatically the callback method on activity result will be called. Now this is where you will check whether this is the same request code data which I'm getting from my second activity or not, and whether the result code from there is okay or not. If it is okay, access the data. And if it is not okay, you can always put an else condition and handle it in a different way. So now let's just learn how exactly we can navigate through different screens with the help of intents. First of all, we need to learn that every time we are transferring to a different screen, the first screen is not getting destroyed. It's always getting into the stack. So if you are on your main screen, you click on a button and you're transferring to the second screen. Now the top of the stack is your second screen, but your first screen is still on the stack. So whenever you click your back button of Android, your second screen gets destroyed, and again top of the stack becomes your first screen. That's the reason you can always see your previous screen or previous activity on your screen. So if I have to talk about it, let's just see, you start from the main activity, you click on a button, you get transferred to the next activity. From there also you click on a button, you get transferred to the third activity. From there you click on back button. So what happens? Whenever you will click on the back button, you will get transferred back to your second activity. You will never get transferred to your first activity because the top of the stack right now will be your second activity. Now from there, again if you click on next button, you will again get transferred to the third one. Now from there, again you click all the way back to the first activity, you will get transferred to your main activity. Until unless from main activity also you click back button, then your activity then your application gets destroyed. So there are two ways you can navigate to your screens. First one, by clicking your back button. In that case, you always put the stacks. Your screens are always kept in the stacks. Second one is your up button, which is generally included in your action bar, which gives you a property of parent-child relationship. So now let's just So now let's just see what exactly back navigation does. Well, like I told you before, back navigation will always look at to your stack. So if there are 7 activities open up and you are on your 7th activity, when you click on back button, you will always get transferred back to your 6th activity. Now, you must have seen you can always switch between the activities with the help of back button also. Let's say you are on your current activity, and when you click on a link, you get transferred to a browser. And after you are done with browser, you again click on back, you will again get transferred back to your own application, because that's what is in the next top of the stack in the back. When we talk about up navigation, it provides you a parent-child concept. You don't have to really get to the back of the stack. You don't have to really get to the stack here. You can define the parent you can define the parent activity, whichever parent activity you want. Let's say you have opened the 7th activity. Now from 7th activity, you want to navigate back to the very first activity. So all you have to do is, in your manifest file, where your 7th activity has been declared, you will provide an attribute known as Android parent activity, whichever the activity you want to make it parent. So when you do that, when you specify that, now when you click on up button, you will always get transferred back to your main activity. You will never get transferred to the top of the stack. To learn more about your activities, intents, transfer data between activities, and the navigations and all, you can follow the following links. Next, we are going to see the practical part of how exactly we can implement the activities and intent together.